Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the show. What a tense day it was today at the National Assembly. In the Senate, lawmakers passed the Electoral Act 2026 Amendment Bill, but not without some uproar. A heated debate over Clause 60, particularly the issue of electronic transmission of results, triggered sharp exchanges. Senator Naya Berebe demanded a division. There were objections, points of order, a brief confrontation here and there, but eventually there was a vote. 55 in favor, 15 against. Concerns were also raised about the timing of the 2027 general elections, possible clashes with Ramadan, and technical inconsistencies within the bill. Meanwhile, across the corridor in the House of Representatives, things escalated even further. A motion to rescind the earlier passage of the Electoral Act Amendment Bill sparked protests. We saw voice vote disputes and eventually a walkout by minority lawmakers accusing the majority of attempting to impose manual transmission of results. The House had reconvened from its budget defense sessions to reconsider some clauses in the bill. Chairman of the House Committee on Rules and Business moved the motion, seconded by Chair of the Committee on Electoral Matters. When the Speaker put the question, the nays were in the majority, but he actually ruled otherwise, sparking protest and forcing a call for an executive session through the House leader. A National Assembly correspondent, Joke Adisa, watched it all unfold, and she has details in this report.
Those against you say.
In the past few weeks, the Electoral Act Amendment Bill has been in the news, forcing the two chambers of the National Assembly into emergency sittings. As the House reconvened, the Speaker appreciated members' sacrifice.
This sitting will only have one agenda, and that agenda is the recommittal, rescission and recommittal of the Electoral Act that we passed earlier.
But as the motion to rescind an earlier resolution was moved and seconded, the House descended into chaos as some members protested. This forced the Speaker to call for a closed-door session. After about 2 hours behind closed doors, aggrieved members insisted on clause-by-clause consideration of the 156 clauses of the bill, leading to another rowdy session. Some of the members moved to amend the latest amendment into the bill, but their motions were resisted by the majority.
So in the second part, and because of that disagreement, it's unnecessary, it's contradictory. Most important referee in this election, because you are expected to transmit the results from the poll units, and you have a fine of only 500,000. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chairman, that is not enough.
The transmitted results shall have the same effect with the physical from EC8A. That's all Nigerians are asking for.
Not satisfied with the outcome of their motions, the aggrieved lawmakers staged a walkout. But that action did not stop the consideration of the bill.
The House approved clauses 1 to 156. Explanatory memorandum, the shadows, as well as the long title of the bill.
The House subsequently adjourned plenary to the 24th of February to enable committees complete their 2026 budget defense sessions with government agencies. The House insists it has kept its word to pass the Electoral Act Amendment Bill in record time. It believes this will give the nation's election management body ample time to prepare for the 2027 general election. Joke Adisa, TVC News, Abuja.
Joke joins me on the show tonight for a blow-by-blow account of what actually transpired at the Great Chamber. The Electoral Act Amendment Bill is now the bone of contention at both houses. Joke Adisa, thank you for joining us. Let's go beyond the headlines. I'd like us to start from the moment it began, when Francis Waive moved that motion to rescind the bill. What exactly triggered the immediate resistance from members?
Yes, Nifemi, you'll recall that in December, the House did pass the Electoral Act Amendment Bill, and they were waiting for the Senate to do the same so that they could have a concurrence and eventually send it to Mr. President for assent. But of course, the Senate delayed in passing its own version of the bill. And so that was where we were until now. So in the aftermath of the Senate's passing of its own version, of course, there erupted some controversies surrounding this. And so the Senate had to go back to the drawing board and eventually passed what it passed. But what happened, what we saw was that the version passed by the Senate, particularly with some of the contentious clauses, of course, differ from what the Senate eventually passed. And so there was the need for both houses to be on the same page. And so that was what we saw play out. After the convening of this emergency sitting, the motion was moved appropriately by the Chairman, Rules and Business, Francis Waibe, and it was seconded by the Chairman, House Committee on Electoral Matters. But at the point that the House needed to vote, members needed to vote on it, of course, there was a dissent among the members. So much so that the Speaker had to call for an executive session to resolve whatever the issues were. But eventually, what did play out that we saw earlier today, is the fact that some of the members really, because if you ask me, we saw that the majority, of course, went with what the House passed. And so even when it was put to vote eventually, we saw that the majority, of course, did have it. And that was what the Deputy Speaker, who presided over the Committee of the Whole, did rule. So
talking about the majority, Joke, there are reports that when the Speaker put the question to a voice vote, that the nays appeared louder, but the ruling went otherwise. Was there confusion over procedure, or do lawmakers genuinely believe the ruling contradicted what they had?
Yes, no, initially that was at the inception of the day's plenary. Initially, it was just after, the House reconvened and the Speaker had to applaud them for coming and all that, the sacrifice and all that, acknowledging their presence and all that. So when the motion was put, and so of course it did appear that even members that were supporting the motion were not even ready. They were not prepared. So maybe the way some of these lawmakers do at times, they definitely did not go along with what the Speaker actually did. Maybe they might just be okay, talking to each other, talking to one another, and the motion is put to question. So, but what we saw, yes, initially when the Speaker did put that question, the majority had it. And so it was like, and the Speaker had to rule otherwise. But eventually, when it was now like, oh, what are we even doing? Let us even be serious with this subject matter that's before us. So that was when members now looked at it and said, no. So because when you look at what eventually happened at the Committee of the Whole, even the Deputy Speaker did call for division. If you are in support, you sit on one side. If you are not in support, so that they will be able to count. But of course, that was they still did not do that. But when eventually the questions were put, there are three major controversial clauses. There we have clause 28, we have clause 60, and we have clause 84. These were the contentious clauses. And so when the Deputy Speaker, of course, did come out to say, okay, let us divide the House so that we'll see who and who. But eventually it was also put to a voice vote, and the majority had it. All of us were there. The majority had it. So it now looked as if it's we versus them, opposition versus ruling party. But let me also say that, of course, even on the floor of the House, even before the walkout, we saw, even after the walkout anyway, we saw some members of the opposition still on the floor of the House. So you can't really say it's we versus them or APC versus others or something, because we just saw that, yes, as far as we saw it, some members of opposition, of course, walked out, but some members of the opposition were still on the floor of the House.
So the minority leader, Kingsley Chinda, we understand, led the walkout. You're saying not everyone went with him. I wasn't there. Perhaps you can paint a picture of the percentage of opposition members who actually followed him. Well,
they came in their numbers. Let me see. I can't put my hand to the exact figure of opposition members that we have now, but of course we saw the likes of Leke Abejide, we saw the likes of Nkechi Nwogu, of course, staying behind, and many others. We saw, yes, they were a bit, they had the number really, but those were not the entire members of the opposition on the floor of the House. That we can confirm. Because we saw those that did not go with them on the floor of the House.
Do you consider it unusual, that level of open protest in the House? Do you think it was spontaneous anger or an organized resistance by that group?
Yes, what we saw play out today, of course, is unprecedented on the floor of the House. Yes, the House has always had rowdy sessions, but this honestly was unprecedented. Like three times, it was like no. Initially, some of these aggrieved members said they were not giving copies of the bill, and then later, when the copies were served, they said they needed to do clause by clause. If you watch closely, you see where they were chanting clause by clause, and eventually, what the deputy speaker who presided over that, the committee of the whole, wanted to do was to say, to save our time, let us do bulk passage, 1 to 10, 20 to 30, and all that. But they disagreed. So eventually, it was forced to clause by clause, and so they started. So things were going on smoothly until they got to clause 60, which deals with electronic transmission of results and manual transmission of results and all that. So that was where the rowdy session, of course, returned. But honestly speaking, it was unprecedented, and it now made it look as if, okay, this is the opposition that is against manual transmission of election results. So, but like as the spokesman of the House, of course, they tell us even after the entire controversy, he said the House took that decision in the best interest of Nigeria. That what they have done really is not to cage everybody, is not to turn the entire system upside down, so that in cases where you have to use manual declaration, you have something to fall back on. In cases where you have the electronic system or fail, you just have to fall back on something. And so for me, it was unprecedented really. And of course, it seems that even that group of lawmakers, of course, came with the mission to actually stall what they considered, of course, not right for the electoral amendment bill. But yeah, of course, eventually we saw that the majority of the lawmakers, of course, went with the resolution of the House.
Joke, the core issue here appears to be electronic transmission of results versus manual fallback. We saw what the Senate did. It would seem that after that harmonization committee met, they have decided to, go the same way. But from what you observed today, is this really about technology or about trust in the electoral process?
Well, I think it's more about trust in the electoral process. If you look at what the agitations have been, the protests that we have had, what we hear from those, of course, opposed to manual transmission of results, is allegations of electoral malpractices, adding figures and all that. And so I think it's more about trust, that the trust is actually not there. But the House has said with what they have passed, that there is since this collation of results is a process. You start from A, you go to B, you go to C and end it at D and all that. So it's a process, and anyone who has any issue in the entire value chain, of course, has the right to raise such observations, and of course approach necessary authorities for clarifications or justice to be served. So it's really about trust. Really, it's about the lack of trust in the system, and it behoves, of course, on the entire nation to see that, of course, we have free, fair, and credible election. And so those opposed are saying that with this with the manual transmission of results still there, it will be difficult really to give credibility to the elections.
Well, that perception has also been criticized by others who think that perhaps we may not have what it takes to actually, see that through without compromising the integrity of the election process itself. But earlier on at the Red Chamber, certain concerns were raised, and I just want to know if you saw any of that at the House of Reps. They talked about the timing of the 2027 election. Reference was made to the 360-day constitutional requirement, and that Ramadan may affect voter turnout, as well as technical inconsistencies in multiple clauses. There are concerns now, or let's say some expectations that that timing may be reviewed with the Senate. Did you hear any form of sentiment in this regard at the House of Reps today?
Well, at the House of Reps, if you look at what was passed, what they did in Clause 28, which deals with notification of election, they have actually brought it back to 300 days away from 360 and 180 that they had before now. So maybe they have put it, yes, now. So what that gives INEC the leeway, of course, to fix the election, to check its dates, its calendar, and of course fix the dates. But no particular mention, maybe probably because of the rowdy sessions that we saw, no particular mention was made about the dates. Initially, when the House started plenary, the Speaker spoke about the dates and the need for the House to actually hold the emergency sitting and address some salient issues, including the date of the election. But that was all that we saw. That was all that we heard about that, because the rowdy sessions, of course, overshadowed everything before normalcy was restored, and the deputy speaker who presided at the committee of the whole, of course, had to manage the issue at hand, and eventually the bill was passed.
Earlier on during the proceeding, the House rejected going into an executive session initially, but later entered one, right? What changed? Was there pressure behind the scenes?
Well, no, they actually, yes, initially when the speaker said they should move, there was no resistance as far as we saw, because the leader of the House did move the motion. It was seconded, and they went into the executive session, which lasted for about almost 2 hours. So, but even some of us were shocked to even see that even at the end of about 2 hours, we still saw what happened. It actually meant that they were not able to agree on some things, which of course played out really. Yes, because there was also the part that had to do with fines, penalty for presiding officers, of course, who alters election results and all that. Some of them, that's contained in the clause 60 sub 6. So some of them, of course, raised issues about that, that the fine of 500,000 naira was rather too small for such an offense. But of course, that motion did not fly at all. So it's not. I think it's normal in the parliament for members during that, and that's what their rule says. In situations where you have discordant tunes, where you have tension rising and all that, the presiding officer has every right to go to ask for a closed door session, and that was what we saw. So there was no objection, as it were. What it was, some of us were just shocked that even after about 2 hours, they still came out to do what we saw on the floor of the House.
For viewers watching us right now, Jake, this may look chaotic. Is this democracy at work, seeing lawmakers fiercely debating, or does today signal deeper fractures within the National Assembly?
Well, in the parliament, since as these are normal, they are very, very normal. They are what we need to also strengthen democracy, to also broaden the horizon, as it were. You can't just imagine the House come, they pass everything, carry. It gets boring. It really gets boring. But with what we saw today, it tells you that yes, our democracy, of course, is working, and that the opposition or any aggrieved member, like the saying in the parliament, in the democracy, you always have the majority. I mean, the majority will always have their way, while the minority will also have their say. So, and that exactly was what we saw play out today. And like the spokesman of the House eventually told us, yes, staging a walkout is part of it's part of parliamentary business. If you are not satisfied with if you have any grievance or another, and you feel that you cannot stay back, and you have every right to walk about. Of course, that will not stop the proceedings. That will not stop the particular legislative business that is at hand. So, and that was what we saw play out. The business eventually ended. The bill was passed, and so what we at this stage now is for the bill to be cleaned up and sent to Mr. President for assent.
Let's talk numbers and power dynamics now. And you mentioned this briefly earlier. Was this strictly majority versus minority? Or are there quite divisions even within the ruling party as regards this development?
Well, with what we saw, we can't really say there is division, because even the deputy speaker was even confident in calling for a division, as it were, to say, okay, if you support, please be on this line. If you don't support, please be on this line. Although that was not eventually done, but honestly, when the questions were put, of course, we were there, we were watching, and we saw that the majority really had it, and so it was given to the majority. Even the minority could not contend that, because the first part that we had, where we saw the majority winning the speaker ruled otherwise, everybody knew, and that was why they had to go into executive session. But by and large, looking at what we have, it's really not about ruling party versus opposition party, and like I did say, we still had some members of opposition even still partake in the consideration and passage of that bill. So I think it's more about what is the need for me, maybe individual interest now, to look at it and say, no, this is what I think should be done. So, but they are making it look as if it's opposition versus the ruling party, but honestly speaking, I do not agree. I do not think that is what we have. Instead, I see a situation where we are trying to make our democracy to be vibrant. We are trying to make the entire process to say, okay, if this is what democracy is about, then we need to, of course, strengthen it and all that. That is what just played out really in the parliament. Arguments, debates, of course, are regular things, are regular patterns. And so there is nothing is unusual in what we saw. Nothing, honestly, was unusual in what we saw. I
hear you, and some have said, why did we also have to wait till pre-election year to start having these debates when we had a long time, post-2023? But if both chambers are revisiting or rescinding earlier decisions, there are also conversations as to what this means for the stability of the Electoral Act ahead of 2027. Are we looking at reform or uncertainty? But we have to go now, Joke, with Nigerians already expressing skepticism about elections. What message does today's row send to voters who are watching from home? Do you think it builds confidence that lawmakers are scrutinizing the law, or it's going to erode some trust somewhere?
Well, it depends on which side of the divide, of course, are those watching, the citizens are viewing the development from. If there are people, usually people are divided over a matter like this. You have those that will say, no, let there be room for manual transmission of results. You have those that will say, no, this must be solely real-time transmission of results. So it depends on the divide. That each of the citizens, of course, are. And so what will happen going forward, of course, will be further debates, questions, answers, and all that. That people commentaries and all that people will, of course, want to put up in the public space. It is not surprising that we are seeing members of the opposition leading this crusade, because they, of course, the general belief might be, maybe the ruling party might want to perpetuate itself in power. But of course, you and I, of course, will also see the way things have, of course, have been playing out. So, but by and large, I think it's about where each of them belongs, so that at the end of it all, you want to, it's somebody who believes, there should be a manual transmission of result, of course, will want to say, no, we support this side. Then the other person, of course, wants to say, no, we do not. So it's the debate that will keep on until, of course, it has been passed, and it has been passed. And so what remains now is for the bill to be cleaned up, like I said, and for the president to announce. And once it is assented to, of course, each and every one of us, every citizens, of course, every citizen, all Nigerians are bound to, obey whatever it is. That
and then attention will turn elsewhere. That's our time, really. Ajake Adisa, National Assembly correspondent, thank you for your insight on the show today. And that's our show, everyone. Remember, you can watch it again at midnight and 6 a.m. tomorrow. I am Nifemi